whatever your feelings are. I mean, the object is to do good work, but, a lot of people they're not going to be as critical as you are of yourself.
No, and they're my emotions. They're my offerings. And hopefully a lot of it is unconscious, if that makes sense, instead of conscious. Because I'm interested in acting that involves the unconscious. We all know how to do something and hit beats and, deliver particular performance. But I'm interested in the performance I don't know how to deliver. That's probably, yeah, and where that's going to go. So not planning huge amounts so that there's a almost it's very fluid when you're in a take, so that there's very few, and there's definitely some structure to the scene because of the dialogue or because of the way in which the scene's going to play out. I rely heavily on the director for that structure too, but I'm here to bring responses and truth.
So what do you put into place first? I mean, like if you're going to do a character like Destroyer, which was so clearly, a shattered person and not you, and somebody who, was deeply, troubled and kind of, her soul was kind of broken up. Like, what do you put in place first to get to that person so you can have this experience you're talking about?
Well, everything's different. I mean, on that character, I found a walk, actually, which was more of, I just started moving in a particular way, which was to do with pain in the abdomen and not being well and protecting the heart and sort of beaten down by life.
Right.
But also particular pain, which is dying, slowly dying. So where does that pain exist? It's in the abdomen and it's taking over slowly.
And that was the starting point.
Yeah, that's how I went into her. And then just shame, which is a huge emotion to carry, and shame of in relationship to the things that have been done.
Right.
To my child, to my partner, to myself. And that then creates a person.
Yeah. This is a heavy person.
And
almost
then
like
the vocally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this, almost like a haunted person. Like
a person who knows they're going to die and has no problem with that ultimately, but wants some sort of salvation with her daughter and in her life, but is actually heading towards death. And that was awful, being in that place, and I stayed in that character. I actually would come home in the jeans and the jacket and not get changed. And,
really? Yeah. Like, so is that why? Just because you were afraid you lose it?
Yeah, I didn't want it to feel like acting. Because it
you
was
wanted to live in that skin for a while.
Well, I didn't want to walk on set and be, now I'm going to perform. I actually needed to, because I would have felt silly. I actually needed to just slowly go into her and become her. And I would growl and moan. Before I was not pleasant. I was a very unpleasant person during that time.
Do all roles take that? I mean, do you have to do that with all roles? Do you have to live in them? No, but for her,
not to that degree.
Right.
The Big Little Lies I did, and even on Undoing, it kind of happened where I just was like, suddenly I was in this place of there was a sort of a disquietness to my personality where I was uneasy and there was duress on who I was. I actually got really sick, and I think this is a big thing that happens to actors.
With the Undoing?
I did. I went down for a week with just having put my because your immune system doesn't know the difference between acting and truth
and
when you're doing them.
Right.
Yeah. And I have not learnt the technique to tell my brain and my body, oh, this is just acting.
Right.
I haven't learned how to clean that out. I've been told, oh, wipe it like this after each take. It doesn't really work for me.
I don't think it's
go
going to happen.
And I don't sleep well, and I'm not well. And if it's that disturbing to me.
Well, those women, all three of them, were kind of brutalized, emotionally and psychologically and physically, the three that seem to be the most taxing that you're talking about. I mean, to stay in that sort of gaslit zone or that abuse zone, I don't know, that must take its toll. I don't wonder why you felt like you had to live in those more than other ones.
But then something like Angie and the prom, I just go, great, I get to dance and I get to love everybody. And I get to go, come here, let me hug you.
Yeah.
It's all going to be all right.
Do you understand Eyes Wide Shut? Does it make sense to you?
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, it does. Well, because I spent 2 years with Stanley, like kind of woven into his psyche. And it makes sense to me. It's an unusual film, but it definitely makes sense to me. But some of the most interesting parts to me are the marriage. I mean, the basis of it being, do you know your partner? And the same, that's 1 minute they can be lying next to you. And I love the line in it where there's a sword between, and it was in the script. I'm not sure if it's in the film, but there's a sword between us. And you're lying there next to your partner in your bed and there's a sword between you. And who's going to pick up the sword? I mean, that's just fantastic, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's also in The Undoing. Like how well do you know your partner business?
Yeah, but different because they're not in, he leaves quickly. In Eyes Wide Shut, we're together.
Right,
and
sure.
We're working through, and I tell him something about myself that unleashes insane jealousy, yet nothing happened. It was a thought.
Yeah.
It wasn't even, there was no action behind it, but there was desire and a thought.
And that
was enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Men, huh?
Well, those things are fascinating to me because, as I say, I've said it before, but I'm really interested in philosophy, and Kubrick is a great philosopher, and I'm interested in hunting down the modern day philosophers who happen to be, I think, filmmakers and writers, but a lot of filmmakers, I think.
Did you spent a lot of time with Stanley then, like hands-on a lot? And were you guys in contact until he passed? I mean, did you remain friends type of?
The night before he passed. Oh, yeah. I mean, I was deeply attached to him, and we would talk all the time, and faxes were big then, so he would fax. But he called the night before and said, I was in New York, and I remember him saying, he'd sent a fax saying, can we talk? And I'd come home and I was like, I can't call him tonight. I'll call him in the morning. Yeah. And I put it off and said, well, I'll call you in the morning. Yeah. What are you looking at? What's wrong?
Nothing. I just want to make sure I was recording loud enough. Go ahead. He said call in the morning.
So you're looking nervously over to the side.
Yeah, I went into a mild panic about my levels. Nothing
saw your eyes.
Nothing to do with you. So what happened?
But yes, I didn't call him that night. And then the next morning, Leon, his assistant, called and I answered the phone. It was still when there were hard lines, and the phone would ring in the apartment, and it rang, and I picked it up, and I thought it was going to be Stanley, and it was Leon, and Leon just said, Stanley Kubrick is dead, like that.
Oh my God.
That's how he said it.
Yeah.
And I just started screaming, and I had young children at the time. I mean, I have a huge fear of phone calls in the night now because I've received a number of them with that sort of news.
They're never
good. My father included. No. So I actually have I have trauma attached to them. But I just started screaming. I collapsed on the ground. But I was that up close to him and that upset. And then Tom and I had to get on the plane and get to the funeral. And it was just like,
Oh my God. But yeah, what an amazing genius guy.
Oh,
he could speak to everything, I imagine. That, whatever range of conversation you wanted to have, he had probably a wealth of ideas and experience and thoughts on it.
Yeah, and knew about everything. Big reader, would call people up and ask questions. So you could ask him. He would challenge everything as well. Like I would say, and I was young, so I had a lot of ideas that I, would throw down as truths.
Uh-huh.
and he would completely, pull them apart.
Comparatively, what was the process of working with a guy like that, versus working with because I love that movie you did, that Sidney Pollack movie. I love his movies, and he always struck me as a sophisticated intellectual guy, and his approach to filmmaking was very grown up. Like it's, you know what I mean? He lets he's not nervous about stories being accessible. I just like what he does as an actor.
Great filmmaker.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Was in Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Came over. Yeah, Sydney came over. So very good friends with Sydney, both Tom and I. Tom had done The Firm with him. And
The Firm is a great movie.
Yeah. And it was.
Yeah.
I was down there in Memphis while they were shooting it the whole time, and we adopted Bella during that. So, but it was fascinating because he came over, and Tom and I were like, right. And Sydney was like, I'm going to be here for a week. And we shot the scene, and he was like, fantastic. I don't know what you're all talking about. And then he was there for 6 weeks. Doing one scene. Yeah. But I remember Tom and I going, right, okay, Sydney, yeah. And then we came in after we shot the scene, and Stanley was like, no, I've actually looked at the scene, terrible. We're going to go back. And then we just slowly started working it. And yeah, so he came over thinking he was going to be there for a week. He ended up there for 6 weeks. And we would cook pasta in the trailer. He was a great cook, Sydney. Great cook. So we basically lived in our trailers because we were on the set, or in the trailer with the kids. And yeah, it was. And people say, that must have been so hard being there for that amount of time. But I always have this response, which is, it is if you fight it. Right. But if you go with it and go, I'm here, these people are fantastic people to be surrounded by. We're with the greatest filmmaker in the world. Right. So it's like being in school, and he comes in and eats the pasta at lunchtime that we cook, or, has a little bite, and we sit around and we talk about life and ideas, and then we go back and we're on the set. And that's kind of why we do it. Yeah. Right.
And was Tom as engaged as you were intellectually with that stuff?
He was on every single day of the film.
Yeah.
So his workload was so much more than mine. So it was much harder for him in terms of the stamina that was required, because that's a 12-hour day every single day for years.
Yeah.
So that's a year and a half. It was almost, plus the rehearsal.
Oh my God, a year and a half. Yeah. So when you're doing that kind of work with Kubrick, after a certain point, are you like, what are you looking for? What are we missing?
Yeah, but you don't. That then creates this.
Right, and you don't want that. Yeah.
No, you just have to flow, and we've kind of got into that flow.
Yeah.
But yeah, my hat is off to Tom on it, because it was like every single day. Whereas I would be told you can go home and wait at the house on standby. I was naughty because after being on standby for 2 months and never being called in, but on standby from 7 a.m. in the morning, waiting. But I was allowed to be at home. I decided, look, we're over here. I'm going to go to Paris. So I went to Paris for a few days, and Tom would say to Stanley, we'd go, is she in the house? And he'd be like, yeah, she's in the house. But then he got hip to it. And one time he said, I'm actually going to call her in. And he called me in, and I was in Australia. I was in Australia, and Tom's like, "Oh, we're screwed," and you're going to have to get on the phone with Stanley. And so I'm like, Stanley, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm actually not in the house. I'm in Sydney. And he goes, unfaithful woman.
Oh wow!
Told me. Yeah, but he was really kind of sweet about it. Yeah. Yeah.
And with Sidney Pollack too, he was also a great director. But let's go back even further.
Great performance director.
Yeah? Why? What makes it different? Because he's an actor?
Yeah, and a great actor. Sidney was a great actor.
A great actor. I love him. Yeah. I love when he plays the morally compromised guy. You know what I mean? It's when he did so many
Husbands
of them.
And wives, and oh my gosh.
Oh my God!
Great.
When he has to take that girl out of the party, The girlfriend? Oh my God. It's crazy.
So good. Yeah. And Judy Davis in that